Hey, I'm your host, Mari Wagner, and you're listening to the Ever Be podcast, where faith meets lifestyle. I'm so excited you're here. Whether you're a new listener or a longtime follower, I know there's something here for you. Pull up a chair and listen in for insightful, real-life conversations and actionable steps on how to claim the full life God created you for. If you're a woman desiring to live a Christ-centered life in today's modern world, then this is for you. Welcome to Ever Be. Hey, Claire, welcome to Ever Be. So happy to have you.
Thank you so much, Mari, for having me. I'm like Everbee's biggest fan. So honored to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. You have been such a wonderful friend and supporter through the process. So I'm glad to have you on as a guest today. I'm sure it'll be the first of several times we have you on the podcast. But today we're going to be talking about something I know that we both love very much, and it's homemaking and hosting especially. And I think that this is sort of a lost art, or at least I hope it's not completely lost, and I still have hope that we can bring it back. But the more and more I interact with young women, the more I'm kind of surprised at how little people know about how to be a really amazing host and how to welcome people into their home. And I know that you are so good at this. And so that's why I thought, let's bring Claire on. Let's dive in. But before we really get into the nitty gritty, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself for all the people who might not know who you are?
Yes, I'm Claire Couche, and I am a Catholic wife and mother, currently living in Dallas, Texas. I studied history and theology before becoming an oncology nurse, and I worked on a bone marrow transplant floor for a bit before having my son, and then I transitioned into becoming a stay-at-home mother. And during that time is when I created Finding Philothea, and that's a platform where we share the beauty and truth and joy and mercy of a life lived in and for Christ. And our patron is St. Francis de Sales. And something special about him is that he loved the laity and he ministered to the laity, and he taught during a time that it wasn't really taught that there is a universal call to holiness. And that just struck my heart. He would write letters to the faithful called and entitled them Philothea. So the one who loves God. So Finding Philothea is all about finding the one who loves God in ourselves, our true self, and then in others too. And so I became an etiquette instructor, a certified etiquette instructor 2 years ago. And I love tying that into virtue, a life of virtue and holiness. And it's been so fun to learn all these tips and tricks, but more so to grow in holiness through loving others through the art of etiquette.
That is so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, we have a certified etiquette instructor. This is like professional advice being given here. I remember in high school, I was on a like super competitive dance team, and our coach would hire an etiquette instructor every year to do a class with us on like meal etiquette and meeting new people, because we would go to like dance conventions and competitions and different things like that. And we always like nobody was like against it, but we always kind of took it as a game, like, oh, the etiquette instructor's here, you know. But as I've gotten older, I actually remember some things and I'm like, thank goodness my coach brought this lady in, because there's so much to learn. And I think that there's even just some basic things that we can forget that we can just like easily start bringing back into our day-to-day practices. So I'm sure we'll touch on a little bit of your tips and tricks and advice throughout the conversation. But just to kick it off, tell us why you love hosting and why do you feel like this is a practice that we should keep alive in our culture?
So to answer this, I would love to start with a story, and it's about my friend Jess, who is such a beautiful friend. I lived in Buffalo for years, and she was just my steadfast friend. We went to Franciscan University together, studied there, and something about her at the beginning of our friendship, I noticed, was she was so anxious about hosting, about having people in her home, and it would come from a place of, she wanted to give her best, but there was that anxiety. And it was something she didn't love about herself and wanted to change. She knew it about herself. And then something happened. She bought a home, a new house, And I saw such a transformation in her. It was so noticeable. She was peaceful, she was present. And one day at her new home, I asked her because it was so noticeable. And I was like, is it the new home? Like, what is this difference? Because it was a beautiful new house. It was her dream home. It had acreage and a horse farm and beautiful gardens. It was the dream
Wow.
home. And she
Yeah.
told me something that really changed everything about hosting for me. And she said that when she was praying to God for this house, because she wanted it so badly, she heard God speak to her heart and say that if I gift you this home, you have to gift it to others. And within that, she went even a step further and she was like, okay, God, like I know this is something I struggle with and I give it to you. And beyond that, she said, I want this home to be your medicine cabinet. I want whoever comes in to be ministered by you, the divine physician. And I thought, how beautiful. And I tangibly saw that change in
Wow.
her. And that story is beautiful, but it becomes even more beautiful when we look at the word host. And what is a host? A host is someone who receives a guest. And when you look at that root word host, the root word comes from a Latin root word for hospital. So when we host, we truly should be that medicine cabinet that ministers to that divine physician can work
Mm.
through us. And it's beautiful too, because as Catholics, we hear the word host often too. Jesus at the Eucharist is the host. And though it has a different Latin root word, there's still a play on those words because the Latin root word is hostia, victim or sacrifice. And no matter what your personality type is, extrovert, introvert, no matter what, there is an element of sacrifice when we do host. So it can be, it's financial, it's cleaning up with when people come. It's just a reality that there is an element of sacrifice like Christ, but there is that gift of self in receiving too, that host. So hosting, I love hosting because it is that about communion and gift of self and sacrifice. And in a world that is hedonistic, where we're so self-absorbed and it's easier in the short term to sit and scroll and keep people at a distance, the long-term effects can be horrific when we keep people at a distance. I was blessed to work with as an oncology nurse with people who were dying. And one of the biggest regrets they had at the end of their life was not loving people the way they should and not being present to the people that they loved. And so hosting is a tangible opportunity to spread the gospel.
Wow. That was so beautifully said. And yeah, what you were saying about being a reflection of Christ in our sacrifice and our service to those we bring in, I think resonates with me so much because what I talk about when it comes to homemaking is that it's not just about our family, although it's a lot about nurturing our family, but it's also about nurturing the people that we welcome into our home. And so that just
Mm,
reminded me and I think just relates very much to just this truth that I'm passionate about that you can evangelize with your home and hosting is a beautiful way to do this. And we won't get into like, homemaking and decorating and how all that can bring about Catholic conversation because I feel like we could talk about that for hours. But
mhm,
I love hearing your perspective on this and knowing that like more than just me is on this wavelength, right? There must be so much truth to this and that Jesus is really putting this on homemakers' hearts to welcome people in to be a reflection of Christ and open the door to conversations about the faith, to spiritual conversations, and to help people, feel loved and kind of like see that love of the Lord through you and through the way that you're serving them. So that was
mhm,
really, really beautiful. And I think, like you said, the story of your friend, I know people, I think my mom even sometimes can stress a lot when it comes to
mm,
hosting and, having people at your house. And I think maybe it stems from different places of either perfectionism or just a lot of work or, a lot to prepare ahead in advance. But I
mm,
think the truth is that hosting doesn't have to be a
mm,
big, elaborate thing. There are times and places where you can host a beautiful, elaborate, summer dinner party like
mm,
you see on Instagram. There's all these trends of like these banquet style tables. And to me, I'm like, yes,
Yeah.
let's do this. And I know you're having an Italian summer right now, and so you're probably having
Mhm.
Italian summer dinner parties. But for those that maybe feel a little bit more stressed or anxious when it comes to having people over, I want to give them some tangible ideas or show different
Mhm.
types of ways that you can host that maybe aren't like a grand event. So what's your opinion? What are some different types
Mhm.
of events or gatherings that you can host that are maybe are a little bit more low key or a little bit less work?
I love the idea of potluck style, and that takes away so much pressure from the host. And just remember too, hosting doesn't always have to be, you make this big meal. It can be coffee and donuts after mass. It could be a rosary tea party where everyone brings their favorite teacup and their favorite bag of tea, and all you provide is like hot water and honey.
That is
But
so
it
cute.
can
I
be
really want to do that.
do it. I'll come. But keep it simple. But beyond that is to really I challenge you for those who are stressed to look at why. Ask yourself why. What is at the root of it? Is it, often it comes from turning inward. And when we start turning outward, that's when it changes, that people just want to get together and to offer your space, no matter how small it is, because I firmly believe the smaller the space, that can be a place for more intimate
Yeah.
conversations and growth. But really get to the root of that stress. Is it pride? Is it, I want to look good. I want my home to reflect, beauty and which is good, but it can be to a fault when we place the aesthetics over the person in front of us. So get to that root of the stress, but keep it simple too. And remember the end goal. The end goal is Christ and sharing Christ and his message and being present to the person in front of us.
Yeah, that reminds me, I think it might have been a podcast or a book I was reading recently, probably a podcast because I'm not a big reader these days. But there was a piece of advice that whoever was on the podcast was talking about when it came to hosting, and they were like, "We are overly stressing about this like perfect way that we present ourselves." And I never thought it being tied into pride, like you were mentioning, but
Mhm.
it's so true. And it's such a good reality check for me as well. And like those times, even though I love hosting, in those times where I'm like, like, clean the floors, do the dishes,
Mhm.
make everything perfect, like, wipe the counters, like, put away all the clutter, like, try to make everything, like, so perfect. It's a good reminder of, like, why are we doing this? And
Mhm.
is actually presenting, like, a picture perfect, image of your home more welcoming than not? And so what this guy was saying, he was like, "Anytime we have someone at our house, I intentionally leave one thing undone." He's like, "I
Wow.
won't get to
Wow.
maybe some of the dishes, or maybe I'll leave
Mhm.
all the, stuff that's at the foot of the stairs that we haven't brought upstairs, I'll leave it there, or we'll leave the
Mhm.
shoes out instead of putting them in the closet." Because it just
I
allows
love
people to
that.
remember, like, yeah, a family lives here, like, there's
Mhm.
life that happens here, and we're not perfect, and our house doesn't actually look like this all the time, and it's okay to, like, bring in your messiness, and it's okay to, like, bring all of the life that you're gonna bring into our home, and I never thought about it that way, and I haven't tried it, but honestly, I feel like that would be a really good challenge for me as well, and
Challenge.
it's just a good reminder of what you were saying of, like, where is this desire coming from? Is it coming from a place of pride, and how may that actually be received by the people that you're welcoming?
Exactly, I love that, and a friend told me that if we are more concerned after our guest leaves, what they think of us and if what they thought of our dish instead of did they receive Christ, there's an issue there. If we want to, look glamorous or our home glamorous, what there's an issue there. So we need to change our mindset with hosting and have it about Christ and that community.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not to say that there shouldn't be any prep at all, right? Like we should take the step to be
Exactly.
intentional and to love our guests by doing some sort of prep. And so, what are some key things that you would recommend? What are some key things that we should be preparing for when hosting?
Mhm. So I personally, and this is not mandatory, but I love to clean up the space that the people will be in, and then the kitchen or the dining area where people will eat, and then the bathroom. So just those areas. And again, it's going to be a mess at the end. So don't, if you can't get to it, that's fine. But if I'm hosting a meal too, I look at the menu, prepare, and take stock of what we have, what we need to. And then something I have done recently that has been a game changer is to really listen and take note, especially for people you host often, their favorite things. And my husband, Mike, does this beautifully. He loves in the details. And this is how God loves us too, so uniquely and in the details. And so if your friend mentioned a favorite tea or coffee, the way they love their coffee, um, take note of that and to serve them that when they're there. And that's made hosting so fun and creative. And just another element to keep in mind as a host is to really love in those details.
Yeah, and that makes you feel so loved as the guest. And I actually just experienced this like yesterday. I'm going to a friend's house tonight and we're going up to the mountains this weekend with some friends for like a
Wow.
girls' weekend. But we're staying at her house for a night before we go up. And she texted me separately from the group chat and she was like, "Hey, I know that you really like need a really solid breakfast to be okay for the day.
Oh,
Like, here are the few things that I have at my house. Do you want me to grab anything else? Or is there anything specific you like in your breakfast?"
beautiful.
And I felt so loved and so cared for, and
Wow.
I was like, "Wow, like, you really listened to me as a friend, like, you really know me, and you actually, like, care to go out of your way to
Mhm.
share what you have for breakfast and what like, show that you're willing to go get more if you feel like I need it because I
Mhm.
need big breakfast in the morning." So, yes, totally agree. Those
Beautiful.
little ways that we can show love, those little ways that we can be intentional. Intentionality goes such a long way in relationships and in hosting. So, that's
It
really
does.
beautiful. Okay, let's move into cooking because I feel like this is we've
Mhm.
touched on it a little bit, but I feel like this is maybe the bulk of the stress when it comes to hosting. Either it's like not knowing
Mhm.
what to prepare or just the number of people that you're serving
Mhm.
and the number of people that you have to cook for. So can you share some advice for people who feel like cooking maybe is their biggest obstacle to inviting people into
Definitely.
their home?
So cooking, if that is your biggest obstacle, definitely don't be afraid. Again, the potluck, but also outsource. You know, if you need to grab things out, do not let that stop you from hosting. And
Mhm.
start another tip is to start small. It doesn't have to be this big elaborate meal. I think people equate hosting with a big meal. That you need to provide a big meal. No, if people offer to help or bring things, accept that help. People want to feel included, and that's a beautiful way to include them. But start small. Again, it can be donuts, coffee, a tea party, or like a little book club. I've seen people bring, their favorite cookbook and a dish from it. So that potluck mentality helps so much too with cooking. But I also want to challenge whoever's listening to, if cooking is a stress, find and pick one recipe, especially one that can feed a crowd. And there's millions on Pinterest, and I can include one on a freebie for you guys, but
Yeah, that would be
definitely pick
awesome.
one meal and practice it and freeze it too. Have it ready so that takes away the stress and from that day if that's your biggest stress. But I just challenge you to practice, get into the kitchen a little bit, and that's how we all learned to cook, was just that practice. But to have even one recipe, even if you make it continuously every time and you're known for that recipe, do
Mhm.
it.
No, I love that. This is slightly on that same vein, but I just even remember as a kid, we had a family friend who had the best, like, pasta, and it was, like, this one pasta dish that she would make every time, and I guess we were kids, but, like, we never cared. We loved going to this person's house because we knew their mom made the best pasta, and maybe this was all she knew how to make, but it was like, she has the best
Mhm.
pasta, and you're right, like, maybe it becomes your signature dish, and that's actually not something to be
Mhm.
embarrassed about. That's, like, that's an honor, you have perfected a certain dish, so that could even be exciting to have kind of like a recipe that you're working towards refining and really making it your own.
Exactly, and just to let those walls down, I think people just
Mhm.
want to be together and will give you
Yes.
that grace, and just to even come out and say, like, "I don't cooking is a stress for me. Do you all wanna pitch in $5? We'll order pizza tonight, but just let's all be together, or let's have s'mores tonight outside. It can be such, just let that barrier of stress. Life's too short to be making these excuses not to invite people into our homes, into our spaces, to spread Christ and his message of love and your joy. You are such a gift, and to
Mhm.
not invite people into the gift that you are, that's a loss. That's a loss to our community and our world.
Mhm. Yeah, and I love your ideas of just making it tea or just coffee and just, like,
Mhm.
making it a smaller thing, and that reminded me this past spring, we did that. We have this friend group that we meet monthly for dinners. It's like a marriage group, and then 1 month, nobody could get together, and so there was one other couple who was like, "We're free after mass if anybody wants to do something." We're like it was last minute, but we're like, "Why don't you guys just come over for tea?" You know?
I
And
love
it was
that.
one of our most memorable times hanging out, and I just remember, like, we were all just sitting on the couch, like, snacking
Mhm.
on some muffins that I made, like, 2 days ago and some
Yeah.
tea that I had in the cabinet, and it wasn't an elaborate thing, but there was just a sense of friendship and a sense of, like,
Mhm.
unity of just something that was, like, spontaneous and casual and just being able to sit on the couch. And something I've noticed as I've gotten older into adulthood is that those really, like, comfortable friendships are
Mhm.
more few and far between. I think as you get older, it's almost like dating, like, you're, like, trying to
Mhm.
impress the person, you're
Mhm.
trying to, like, put out a really good picture of yourself, and
It's
it
so
just, like,
true.
causes a little bit of, like, this, like, stiffness,
Mhm.
you know, or it's just not as
Definitely.
common for, adult friends to just, like, sit on the couch and watch a show because you're not in college
Mhm.
anymore, you don't live in a dorm, but
Mm,
we crave that
we
comfortability, we
do.
all crave that friendship, so that's another thing to think of when hosting too is, like, you don't have to go over the top in hosting, you could actually intentionally, even if you love hosting, be like, "How can I create a comfortable, cozy hangout one
Mhm.
night? How can I invite people to sit on the couch and be comfortable?" And, have, like, really
Exactly.
cozy, like you said, tea or really cozy biscuits or something that's just
Mhm.
a little bit less elaborate that helps people just relax and feel cozy and just be like, "Wow, like, I love being
Mhm.
home." You know what I mean?
Exactly, and to feel people just really wanna be known. They
Mhm,
really do, and that's a heartache for all of us, and to
mhm,
truly invite them to a safe place to let themselves be known is really a beautiful thing. It really is.
yeah. Okay, let's get into the do's and don'ts of hosting, especially with your unique certification of etiquette. Can you just share with us kind of like those practicals, like what are good and bad habits to have both as a host and as a guest?
So something when interesting when I was researching the root word of host, it also is the root word for guest too. So I think as we grow as hosts, we also grow as guests too. I just love the root words and learning about that. But something to keep in mind too. And with host etiquette, prepare as much as you can beforehand. That allows you to be present. And if you are able to, and someone arrives early, and they offer to help, take them up on their help. And one thing I love doing, especially if there's a crowd coming, is having that person who showed up a little early to help greet people at the door while you do things. But once people arrive, it's up to you. You can ask them to take off their shoes or they can leave them on. And then the next step is it's a forgotten one, but important, especially if they don't know your home well, is to show them where the restroom is and then offer them a drink. And then if it is a meal, make sure that the centerpieces aren't blocking the view and at the table, and also no scented candles because that can disrupt the food too. So, um, yeah, those are some just quick hosting etiquette. And then for guest etiquette,
Mhm.
always offer to bring a dish or a side or offer your help to the host in any way. And let them know too, especially if they haven't asked, if you have any food allergies. And hosts should ask if you have any allergies, but aren't required to ask if you have food preferences. So don't share your food preferences too if you're a guest, just your food allergies, and then show up about 5 to 10 minutes late just to give your host some time to prep and do those last finishing touches, and then, offer to take off your shoes or what your host prefers. And then just enjoy and take note of social cues, especially if it's time to leave and wrap things up, because
Mhm.
your host needs to clean and get rest, but always take note of your host and offer to help in any way you can.
I have never heard somebody say, like, show up 5 to 10 minutes late, and I can't tell you how grateful I am to hear you say that. In that case, I'm a really good guest because I often show up 5 to 10 minutes late. And it is so true when I'm the host and I hear someone knock on the door, like, on the dot, I'm always like, "Why? Why? Why are you on time? Like, I'm not ready."
So true.
And it's just funny because 'cause I'm just used to running a few minutes late. I sometimes expect other people to, but now I can see it as a good etiquette tip, like just giving your
Yeah.
host a little bit of space to do last minute prep. So
It
definitely
is. You're practicing
taking that
etiquette
one with me.
beautifully. It's good. But if you are running more than 15 minutes late, definitely let them know. But there
Mhm,
is an appropriate buffer. And
mhm.
etiquette is all about, showing that honor and dignity to the other person too. So all these little tips and tricks are really in honor of the other person and sharing the gift of who you are too. So it is a good to give your host some time, so there's a reason for all these do's and don'ts.
Yeah, amazing. So then when it comes to overnight guests, I feel like our conversation has kind of mostly been around like maybe dinner parties or, one-off events. But what about overnight guests when you have someone staying with you for the weekend or for a night? What are some things to keep in mind, maybe to keep their stay more comfortable and more enjoyable?
So one of the best practices of a host is to anticipate your guests' needs. So one thing I do personally is before the overnight guest arrives, I reach out to them, I call or email or text. Is there anything you need? So a friend last year came with her baby and I asked, do you need diapers here? They were flying in. I can get the size you need or wipes or whatever you need, contact solution, all those things that just anticipating those needs. And I usually have, even if they do say no, a little travel size toiletries for whatever they need in the bathroom. And then I always have a little sign, a welcome sign by their bed with the Wi Fi password. And just if they need anything, just to feel welcome in the house. And that's actually, I just made it on Canva, printed it out, put it in a frame. And that's been one of I was surprised, the most touching thing when people come over, they're like, I love that because I think Wi-Fi is a barrier, like they want to know the password, but just to have that anticipation of your guest needs is huge. And then also asking your guests before they arrive to what meals they'll be sharing with you and if there's anything you can prepare, like your friend did, remember what their favorite foods are, if they have any allergies. And but it's really about just what asking yourself, what do I love when I go to someone's home or into their space or spend the night somewhere? What are those little things you love? And provide that for your guest.
Yeah, I love that. Just the way you phrased it, anticipate their needs. There's two things I feel like you said in the past, few minutes that really stuck with me that go along with that. And that's such simple things like share the Wi-Fi password in a little note or something, or in a little sign in their guest bed, or even tell them where the bathroom is. I feel like those are two things that people always ask. And even yourself, like when you ask, you're always kind of like, hey, like,
Yeah,
"Where's the
so true.
bathroom?" Like, "Can you tell?" Like, it's, like, a little bit, like, awkward to ask because you have to
Mhm.
announce, like, "I'm going to the bathroom." And
Exactly.
so that is a really good tip to just show them, like, "Hey, by the way, like,
Mhm.
this is where the bathroom is." Like, "Hey," like, have a little card where, like, this is where this is the Wi-Fi password. And something I saw on Instagram recently in a reel was, like, labeling things as well to kind of, like, anticipate those needs, like,
Wow,
in the bathroom, labeling,
beautiful.
like, extra toilet paper, in the cabinet or something, or like having baskets that say like face towels or makeup
I
wipes if
love
you have
that.
those little like travel things. They don't have to be like
Mm,
displayed out with big signs, but like even in the cabinets, I know like I've been to people's houses, it's like, oh, we're out of soap or we're out of toilet paper. And you have to like look through the cabinet and be like, where are the
so
things that I need? So even that's a helpful thing as well. These have been so good, Claire. I feel like I'm
Oh,
ready to welcome people into my home this summer and just have
beautiful.
such a good time. Is there anything else that you want to share? Or anything else that you feel like you want to leave our listeners with today?
I would just invite you not to make excuses to host and really see it as an invitation from Christ himself. And every person that you encounter or invite into your home is Christ, and to invite him into your space in a special way. And Christ himself gives us a beautiful example, the perfect host, Jesus in the Eucharist, the perfect host, when he in the Gospel of John says, I am going to the Father to prepare a place for you. He has in his Father's house there are many rooms, and he's going there to prepare. What a beautiful invitation and witness for us, an example for us to imitate him and that sacrifice, that love. And so don't make an excuse to invite people into your home, and truly see it as an opportunity to love and to share Christ's love for us.
Thank you. That was so encouraging. I've loved this conversation because you just have such a gentle and beautiful way of encouraging. So I'm sure that our listeners are just feeling prepared and excited to host this summer or whatever season you're listening in. Where can our listeners learn more about you or find you?
So you can follow along on Instagram at Finding Philothea, or our website, findingphilothea.com. Also on YouTube, Finding Philothea. But those are the main places. I'm usually sharing some etiquette on our website and also some tips in Reels on Instagram. And I'll share with your Everbee community a freebie, just recapping all this hosting etiquette, the do's, the don'ts, and also the meaning behind it. And I'll share a recipe too so no one has an excuse not to cook.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that is so good. That's going to be so helpful because even if we hear this episode once, just having like a physical like PDF would be so helpful if you have like something big that you're hosting just to review. So that would be so awesome.
Perfect.
And once we get that link, I will put it in the show notes so that everybody can access it easily.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mari. And this community is beautiful, and it's an honor to be a part of it.
Yes. Love you, Claire. Thanks for coming
Love
on
you.
today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening in. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and on social media, and give me a 5-star rating on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. That helps me and the show out so much. Also, make sure to follow the podcast on Instagram at Everbee Podcast. And if you want more content like this and you don't already follow me, you can also follow me on Instagram at mari.c.wagner. And may his praise ever be on our lips. God bless.